Hello and welcome to Afternoon Tea with Karen and Karen's Library. Well, the hate crime laws that I have been monitoring have finally arrived. So I've got some clips regarding that One Nation abstained, and that no one's been to trial yet.
You might have seen today, though perhaps not because it didn't actually receive a great deal of coverage, but new hate speech laws passed through the federal parliament. Now, this happened with barely an hour's discussion in the Senate. It started in the lower house yesterday, passed there, then went through to the Senate today where it was eventually passed. So this will now become law. Now, there are certain parts of it with which I agree and others with which I am really worried. It means that there will be mandatory minimum sentences of 6 years for terror offences, 3 years for financing terror, and 12 months for displaying terror symbols. But it then goes on to talk about inciting violence, essentially, and the means by which someone incites violence and the rules by which you have to meet if you are in court being accused of inciting violence. Now, they have watered this down to the point where you would question whether things you might just say in a normal conversation, joking half-heartedly, could essentially now be called inciting violence here in Australia. If you go to the Criminal Code, what they've changed is in section 80.2a. Now, it previously said that a person commits an offence if the first person, which is how they refer to it in the Act, intentionally urges, remember that, intentionally urges another person or a group to use force or violence against a group. That has now changed from intentionally urges to advocates, right? So there doesn't necessarily have to be intention anymore. The wording changes to advocate to water it down. You then get to the next bit, which says that the person does so intending that the force or violence will occur, i.e., you say, kill this bunch of people, etc., because you want people to do that. That now changes from intending that it will happen to reckless as to whether it will happen. So you could say something, perhaps jokingly, not meaning that it will happen, but if you are reckless to the fact that it could happen, you have, by the law, now incited violence. And the groups that we are talking about have also expanded. It used to be race, religion, nationality, national or ethnic origin, or political opinion. Well, now they insert into that sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, intersex status, and disability. Now, we all know there has been a scourge of anti-Semitism in this country, and we want something to be done about it. But this is being used as a vanguard to water down free speech and add in other protected groups, like the ones I just read out there. Sex, sexual orientation. Speaking of sexual orientation, Allegra Spender was talking about this legislation last night on 7:30. Now, she is talking here about a sign that was held up at a neo-Nazi rally, as she says. But that's not really pertinent to the sign that was held up. She'll explain the sign she thinks should be made illegal. Take a listen.
I support where the government is going with this legislation, but I want to go further, and that is the question I'm really trying to address is those people who are promoting and really pushing hate in our community. So currently, under the current legislation, things like some neo-Nazi protests which had destroy pedo freaks as a banner, that wouldn't be covered under the current legislation.
Crying out loud.
So she wants destroy pedo freaks to be speech that is now considered a crime in Australia. I understand the idea that, basically no one has been charged under hate speech laws, and I don't think that's a problem with the law necessarily. I think that's been an unwillingness from police to try the laws out.
Yep.
I mean, we're fiddling with laws here without really knowing the bounds of what can be done with them because they haven't actually been tested in court. So we jump the shark and now say that if you say something that is reckless or without, reckless knowledge of what might happen, you could be up on an offence. I just wonder if, for instance, because sex is now included, right? Clementine Ford, a feminist commentator, many of you would know, used to quite frequently say, kill all men. Now, sex is now a protected group under this legislation. You say kill all men. She means it as a joke or ironically when she says it. But is she saying that with reckless as to whether someone might go and then kill a man? So does that mean that sentence, which is from her a joke, is now a crime in Australia? Is this where we've gone?
So let's take that as a rhetorical question. Here's the bigger problem we've got in this country. As you pointed out, the Senate took all of 1 hour to review this legislation, which is not exactly simple. It's quite complicated in some of its detail. Our senators spent more time debating whether or not Donald Trump is a threat to the world than they did debating this legislation, which then has direct impacts upon things you post on social media, things you say to a mate over a beer at the pub, something you say outside your church or whatever. And so the Senate, which is meant to be a place of reviewing legislation, saying, is this good? What are the unintended consequences? Has just become all about rubber stamping legislation according to which senator, which party each senator belongs to. It's quite derelict in their duty of our senators to wave through legislation, which you've so brilliantly described has got all sorts of problems with it. How do you interpret it? What does it mean? To wave it through without doing due diligence?
And these things are never tested until it's before a court, until someone brings a case. And then, of course, the judge in control of that simply is held by the bounds, and then you've got a precedent set. Because either the judge said it applies or it doesn't apply, hence the cases build up and then lawyers have precedents to rely on. It's utterly insane. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm a free speech absolutist. I really am. You can't have free speech without hate speech. You either have both or neither. And as we know, anything that's even incitement, how do you measure incitement? Now that they've taken intent out of it, one would think, because that lowers the bar. Intent is very hard to prove. I can say I was joking. You can say I was dead serious and my intent was to cause you grievous bodily harm. Who's to say? So they've removed that now, and all that matters is that I said it and the rest is up to the judge. I mean, it's just a can of worms. I genuinely find it disgusting that we have any of these kinds of bills, well, now laws, in our country at all. It does not belong in a free democracy.
Hi guys, Senator Rennick, People First Party. I've just come out of the chamber this afternoon, whereby the two major parties, with the support of One Nation, have actually voted for the hate crimes bill. This is a restriction on freedom of speech. This is the third sitting week in a row whereby the government and the opposition have sought to shut down the exchange of speech in this country. It is an absolute disgrace. There are already laws against violence, inciting violence in this country at the state level. It is the responsibility of state governments through their policing to deal with acts of violence. The idea that this particular bill was going to crack down on violence against particular groups is an absolute insult insofar as what group deserves greater protection than other groups. All Australians should be protected against violence regardless of their background. But I'm more concerned about the fact that every week we come down here, it's just another attempt to shut down free speech in this country. It's another attempt by the two major parties to control the way we think and we speak, and it has to stop. Now, while I didn't expect the two major parties to relent on this law, I should add too, sorry, I forgot to mention this, that debate on this particular bill was gagged, as was the committee stage. Now, the committee stage is where you get to speak and ask questions about how these laws will apply. That was also gagged as well. Now, on top of that, there are a number of amendments that were moved. One was a sunset clause against the mandatory sentencing. So that's the other thing. There's mandatory sentencing here. Even the judge isn't able to apply their discretion, and that will be needed in cases whereby people are using this law to shut down any opposition to their views. So the motions that were moved to shut down or stop mandatory sentencing, they were voted against, as was another motion that said this bill should not apply to people under 14. So that's right. So children under 14 can be locked up for hate crime speech in this country. That is an absolute disgrace. And I'm going to call out One Nation here because Malcolm Roberts actually voted against that amendment so that children under 14 can't be locked up with crimes of hate. And One Nation abstained from the actual, by voting against this, they actually abstained on the final bill itself. I don't know where Pauline was. I haven't seen her in the chamber all day, but that is yet another cop-out. And I challenge Malcolm Roberts and Pauline Hanson to a debate as to why they think that this bill should be allowed to stand. I thought that One Nation wanted to eliminate bureaucracy, and yet we're going to bring in federal laws. There's already state laws to stop this sort of behaviour, to stop violence. The policing is a function or responsibility of state governments. It's not a function of the federal government to carry on like this. And of course, it's just the two major parties attempting to trying to control us rather than actually focus on delivering solutions to the real problems in this country, like cost of living, housing crisis, the energy crisis, the high immigration crisis. No. Let's not talk about any of that stuff in Parliament this week. Let's just bring in laws that are going to censor what you can say, and as a result of, and what you can think ultimately, because if you can't say it, then, it's much harder to think it without saying it. So I'm absolutely just very annoyed and angry at, yet again, the two major parties, with the help of One Nation. It was just myself and Ralph Babbitt from the Conservative side of politics that voted against this bill. So shame on all the parties that yet again are imposing more command and control in this country. It's got to end. It's why we need a new minor party that's going to actually stand up for their rights and be consistent and treat all Australians consistently. We need a minor party that's professional and polished and is going to be consistent in their application of the law to all Australians, and we're just going to put people first, regardless of whatever ideology you might want to shove down their throat. Anyway, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit ticked off, but I am, because we've wasted another week in Parliament talking about this bill rather than dealing with solutions to solve your problems. Anyway, I'll talk soon.
And from Senator Babette, we have the other no voters, maybe the new minor party.
A man suspected of being involved in an alleged caravan terror plot is spending his days locked away from other inmates and cut off from the outside world, according to his brother. Speaking outside court, he says his sibling is innocent and doesn't hate Jews.
They're the faces allegedly linked to Sydney's anti-Semitic crime wave and suspects involved in a sinister terrorism plot. But according to Scott Marshall's brother Stuart, he's none of the above.
Just a normal person who doesn't hate anyone. But yeah, I don't know why they're going this way.
Supporting Scott's partner Tammy Farrugia during a brief appearance at Liverpool Court today, Stuart claims his brother was clueless when he allegedly purchased a caravan that was later found packed with explosives and ditched on a road at Dural.
It's nothing to do with it. He's innocent.
It's understood Scott Marshall is being held in segregation here at Silverwater Jail, locked away from other inmates. According to his brother, Scott was unaware he'd even been linked to this caravan filled with explosives until he saw his face in the media.
He's not allowed to cop anyone or associate with anyone.
No masterminds or neo-Nazis, and no word from police who could be pulling the strings.
Might be George Soros. Anyway, that'll do. See you later. Bye.